After 2 hidden years as the CEO's secret lover, her unexpected departure exposed an amazing truth. Sarah stood at the entrance of the sleek, glass office building, her heart racing as she stepped into the world of possibilities. 2 years of relentless perseverance had landed her this coveted internship at Dynatech, a leading tech startup in Chicago, yet the exhilarating high quickly fluttered with an undercurrent of fear. Though she loved her job, it had morphed into a tangled web of ambition and secrecy that weighed heavily on her conscience. The only woman in her department, she often felt the pressure of skepticism like a palpable force, but her fiery determination to prove herself pushed her forward. Here, in this thriving world of entrepreneurs and innovation, she hoped to carve out her own identity, separate from the working-class roots that anchored her past. Each day brought long hours, a suffocating blend of exhilaration and exhaustion. Sarah had exceeded expectations, proving her skill time and again in pivotal projects. Yet her mind often left space for David, the charismatic CEO whose reputation as a brilliant leader shone brightly. Their connection ripened amid whispers of board meetings and project launches, but the hidden nature of their romance morphed from sweet exhilaration into a weighty anchor that threatened to drown her ambitions. She found herself torn. How could she be the rising star she dreamed of becoming while clinging to a love that, no matter how fierce, drew her into shadows? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the months slipped by, the thrill of their secret love began to wane under the pervasive anxiety of being found out. A threat loomed in the form of an insider who had witnessed their secret moments, their whispered conversations in quiet corners of the office. Sarah's heart twisted painfully at the thought this was her life's work, the culmination of her sweat and tears. Could she really risk it all? Each time she contemplated resigning, her mind flashed with images of her parents, their sacrifices echoing in her thoughts, reminding her of what it had taken to get here. Would they understand her choice to walk away from the very dream they had inspired in her? The day she handed in her resignation felt like the end and the beginning all at once. The air was thick in the room as her eyes locked with David's across the table. His expression screamed a mix of betrayal and understanding, and Sarah felt a crack in her resolve. Just as she prepared to leave it all behind, a chaotic series of events erupted around her, exposing a deeper layer of corruption festering within Dynatech. The panic in the office compounded her emotional turmoil, presenting her with the rawest moral dilemma yet: protect the man she loved, or expose the darkness that could save her colleagues. With the clock ticking ominously, Sarah faced the ultimate choice. Could she maintain her integrity, even at the cost of their love? The confrontation in the office meeting room was electric with tension, David's voice pressing her on the consequences of her decision, each heartbeat echoing in protest. Would letting secrets unfold mean shattering their past? Could she find the courage to expose the ugliest truths at the risk of everything: her heart, her reputation, her future? The truth swirled, heavy and undeniable in the air, as the clock ticked ominously. Sarah felt the weight of her choice blackening her vision, drawing a line between love and the justice she desperately craved. Would she uncover the reality hiding in shadows, reclaiming her dignity before it was too late? The fate of her identity hung precariously, keeping readers breathless at the edge of her decision. The silence in the meeting room hung like a dense fog, wrapping Sarah in a cloak of uncertainty. The glance she had shared with David felt both suffocating and liberating, a combination that tugged at her resolve. Each tick of the clock resonated within her mind, amplifying the urgency of her decision. She could sense the expectation within the room, eyes glancing toward them, waiting for a verdict that only she could deliver. Her heart beat a chaotic rhythm of fear and determination, a battle between the woman she was becoming and the woman she thought she had to be. "How can you do this, Sarah?" David asked, his frustration barely masked by a veneer of calm. His voice sliced through the tension, stirring emotions that she had wrestled to keep at bay. After everything we've built together? The use of "we" made her stomach turn, the implications were suffocating. Everything they had built together had come at the cost of her dreams. Everything he had sacrificed for their romance now stood in stark contrast to the truth she was poised to unveil. She opened her mouth, but words jammed in her throat, a chokehold on her truth. "David, it isn't just us anymore," she finally managed. The fear in her voice punctuated her conviction. "This is bigger than our relationship. It's about the company's integrity and about my integrity." As David's expression darkened, she felt a stirring within her, a surge of courage that pushed aside the panic. Perhaps this was her moment, not just to expose the corruption but to reclaim herself amidst chaos. Around her, murmurs rose as colleagues began piecing together the situation. They sensed the rift, the impending fallout, and Sarah felt the weight of their unspoken expectations settle heavily on her shoulders. No longer could she afford to be defined by their silence or her clandestine relationship. "Sarah," David stepped closer, desperation lacing his tone. "You're making a mistake. Think about the ramifications on us, on your career." That was the crux of it, wasn't it? Career versus heart. What had once been a tangled emotional mess had begun to clarify like the fog lifting from the cityscape beyond the glass walls. "I can't hide any longer," she said, each word firming her stance. "I won't compromise my values because of what we had. It's time the truth is seen by everyone." The gravity of her choice settled into the air around them. There was no turning back. She had felt herself grow within these walls, not just technically but morally. The woman who had walked into Dynatech with ambition had transformed into someone brave enough to face the consequences of her reality. As Sarah gathered herself to speak once again, the door burst open. A frantic air swept through the room, followed by the CFO, his face pale and drawn. "We need to talk," he blurted, cutting through her resolve. "Now." In that moment, the full force of her emotions crashed down, leaving her reeling. The walls pressed in closer, a sense of urgency surging as she realized the extent of the darkness woven into the fabric of their company might go far deeper than she imagined. She needed to harness her newfound resolve to navigate through the chaos ignited by her very decision to speak up. The room pulsated with a fever pitch of tension and anxiety. "Sarah," David pleaded, but her gaze remained steadfast. The stakes had escalated beyond their personal tribulations, entwining her fate with that of those she empathized with. "I'm ready to face whatever comes next," she declared, the tone of her voice steadying her uncertainty. But even as she spoke, a dark thread wove through her heart, exposing the truth could cost her more than her job. And questions lingered in the air. Was she truly ready to uncover the depths of the corruption that had shadowed their successes? Would her revelation truly protect them? The CFO's urgent expression captured her focus, and an unshakable thought gripped her: what if the truth she sought was just the beginning of a much larger battle she never saw coming? She would have to confront forces she'd barely glimpsed, and... The thought sent ripples of anxiety cascading through her mind as the door shut ominously behind him. Was this truly her moment of truth, or just the prelude to an impending storm? The CFO's expression was a fissure of anxiety, fracturing the tension that had enveloped Sarah like a shroud. His urgency put her in a state of heightened alertness, one that demanded her immediate attention. This was no longer about personal choices. The horizon ahead was murkier than she had dared to comprehend. "Sarah, there have been reports of accounting discrepancies, and they trace back to the upper management," he said, his voice taut with stress. "I need your help to figure this out. Lives are at stake here." She felt a wave of nausea rise. Here was the very corruption she had wished to expose, but now it had a face, a reality she couldn't ignore. The implications of her decision began to spiral into unforeseen repercussions. As she exchanged fleeting glances with David, everything she thought she knew seemed to teeter on the edge of a cliff. "What do you mean, lives at stake?" she managed, a nervous quiver underlying her steadiness. The CFO leaned closer, lowering his voice. There are people being manipulated from the inside. If these discrepancies come to light in a public forum, it could ruin careers, and worse, people could face legal charges. I trust you to help navigate this. Her heart raced, pounding out the rhythm of her internal conflict. How had this escalated so quickly? Only days ago, her battle had been personal, rooted in her relationship with David. Now, it was thrust into a whirlwind of ethics and corporate integrity. Why me? She asked, her thoughts racing to the last few years, an employee first, an ally of David later. Why should I trust you? Because you know them, Sarah. You know how they operate. And if we don't act decisively, his voice trailed off, fraught with implications too dire to verbalize. Something within her began to galvanize. This wasn't just about her, it was about her values weighed against a larger injustice. This could become her turning point if she chose to dive deep enough into the murky waters of deception. She could unravel the very tapestry that had ensnared so many others. Okay, she said, her voice steadying like the calm before a storm. What's our first step? Gather information quietly. We need proof before I confront the board about this. You're the best analyst I know, Sarah. If anyone can discover the truth, it's you. A fresh wave of determination surged through her. The realization that she wasn't just reclaiming her own integrity, but potentially safeguarding others' futures brought clarity to her ambition. This course of action meant embodying the change she hoped to see not only for herself but for her colleagues, many of whom had invested their lives into this company. However, amidst the rush was a gnawing fear. Did she have it in her to juggle the fallout of this revelation with the personal upheaval surrounding her relationship with David? Her internal voice whispered doubts, concerns about her capacity to tread this complex duality. As discussions with the CFO formulated plans in her mind, she sensed the walls of the room shifting both metaphorically and literally, closing in as opportunity and danger waxed and waned between chance and consequence. Keep David out of this for now, the CFO continued, unaware of the depth of her conflict. He's south too close to the issues. If he finds out you're digging, it could compromise your position or worse. The suggestion clawed at her conscience. David had been an integral part of her journey, a companion in both triumph and turmoil. Yet, to protect the integrity of their company, and perhaps the very fabric of who she was becoming, she needed to strip away emotional biases. Hours later, as she began combing through documents, emails, and reports, the gears of a greater challenge began to turn. Each layer of evidence she peeled back drew her deeper into the labyrinth, where loyalty was often folded into deceit. Sarah didn't just feel like she was fighting a battle, she was waging war against the old version of herself still tied to David and their past. Could she find within herself that ruthless spirit she would need to confront not just the corporate rot, but also the complexities of squaring off with David later? As she meticulously catalogued her findings, a chilled sensation of both dread and exhilaration settled upon her. What would happen when she had to confront the man who had once shared her dreams, but might now become her most formidable antagonist? With this revelation hanging like a sword over both of their heads, she knew a reckoning was on the horizon, just as turbulent as the storm she saw advancing darkly in her mind. The stakes had been raised. This was no longer just a personal journey but a catalyst for transcending beyond the confines of their shared past. Would she rise as a champion for truth or succumb to the shadows that had been cast long before her arrival? The clock now pulsed with urgency once again, propelling her toward an inevitable confrontation neither she nor David could escape. In that moment, she envisioned a confrontation brewing not solely in the meeting room, but within the very depths of their relationship. Would she be able to maintain her newfound resolve when facing the very person she loved? The future stretched enigmatically ahead, laden with unanswered questions and turbulent emotions. And above all, one poignant thought lingered: how far was she willing to go to uncover the truth? As Sarah's anxious mind raced, she prepared for the inevitable collision between personal and professional truths that awaited her. Little did she know, the unfolding drama was merely the tip of an iceberg, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about loyalty, love, and integrity. The night wore on, engulfing Sarah in a sea of documents and quiet revelations that bore down upon her like a heavy fog. In the dim light of her office, she felt both liberated and entrapped, armed with the knowledge that could change everything. The hard truths she uncovered slowly crafted the contours of her new reality, one rooted in justice but marred by the risk of losing everything she once held dear. Her fingers moved deftly over the keyboard, organizing the torrent of evidence. Each email contained traces of deceit, subtle manipulations threaded throughout spreadsheets and masked in corporate jargon. Sarah's heart raced as she processed the implications. This was no longer mere accounting discrepancies, it was a corruption that rippled through the very foundation of the company. She felt the pulse of injustice urging her to piece together the larger narrative, crafting a scenario she could no longer ignore. Each revelation solidified her resolve, yet doubt still hovered like dark clouds above her head. How could she possibly confront David with this? At times, when she paused to reflect, the warmth of their shared past filled her with pangs of nostalgia. He had been her protector, her confidant, and seeing that bond transform into a confrontation filled her with a chilling uncertainty. Would she sacrifice their relationship for the sake of corporate integrity? The unsettling question loomed large, and she had no answers. As she meticulously compiled her files, Sarah felt a shift deep within herself. The battle was not merely external but deeply internal, one that would stretch her beyond the confines of what she once knew. The tension bathed her consciousness, forcing her to confront her own vulnerabilities, the insecurities that whispered she might falter, that she might not possess the courage required for this monumental task. With the evidence now taking shape, her mind flitted to the CFO's orders: gather information quietly. Trust was a fragile construct waiting to shatter beneath the weight of revelations. As she closed her laptop for the night, the severity of loyalty and betrayal began to crystallize in her thoughts. She grasped that the corporate world had no room for sentimentality. It was a crucible that hardened resolve and steeped ambition. The cacophony of her thoughts forced her to take a step back. The past few days had been a whirlwind, and she realized she needed to strategize. Clarity dawned: she would not allow fear to be her guiding force. She had become an agent of change, not just for herself but for her colleagues who still believed in the integrity of their workplace. On her morning commute, as the city unfolded around her, boredom was supplanted by anticipation and exhilarating, nerve-wracking excitement pulsing under her skin. She began mentally rehearsing her confrontation with David, gauging her tone and weighing her words carefully. Would she come to him as an adversary or a partner in uncovering the truth? The duality of her intentions twisted within, demanding resolution. Meeting him today might serve as a fuel for that complexity. Would he come to realize that the truth she sought aligned with his own values? Or would he see her actions as a betrayal? It was this last thought, disturbing yet strangely motivating, that propelled her forward as she entered the office building. Sarah peered at David across the sea of cubicles, his familiar form a blend of comfort and conflict. The air buzzed with unspoken tension, heavy enough that it felt tangible. Would he sense her shifting devotion? Her resolve was firm. She reminded herself of her mission, grounding herself in the sense of purpose slowly developing within her. As she moved closer, her heart raced with anticipation of the conversation ahead. Reaching the threshold of his office, she paused. The weight of their shared history pressed down upon her, the intricacies of their relationship weaving through her thoughts. But this was business now, and it was time to challenge the status quo. "David?" she called softly, but in that moment, she noticed there was another presence, a figure obscured in his doorway, leaning casually against the frame. As she took a breath, she realized this could complicate everything. Her instincts screamed caution, yet her ambition blazed boldly within. Here she stood at the precipice, ready to leap. The atmosphere shifted palpably as she entered the domain of uncertainty and profound revelation. With her heart pounding and her intentions settled, she steeled herself for the brewing confrontation that could irrevocably change their lives, a meeting that might unravel not just the company's secrets, but their very relationship as well. The tension crackled in the air as Sarah stood at the entrance of David's office, her mind racing. The figure in the doorway, a senior analyst named Jen, flashed a quizzical look in her direction, as if she sensed that something momentous hung in the balance. Sarah's initial instinct was to step back, to retreat to the safety of her computer screen, where numbers and documents obeyed her command. But she fought it, reminding herself of why she was here. "Hey, Sarah, good to see you." David smiled, the warmth of his voice making her heart twinge despite the storm brewing within her. There was a familiarity in his gaze, a shared history that reached back years, but now it jangled harshly against the gravity of the situation. "Hi, David," she replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. The words felt leaden, like they carried the weight of every ounce of unresolved conflict. "Can you give us a moment?" he asked Jen, his tone casual yet commanding. Sarah could see Jen hesitating, glancing between them, an unspoken question lingering in the air. "Sure. Just if you need anything, let me know," Jen replied, casting a wary glance at Sarah before turning on her heel. The door clicked shut behind her, emphasizing the isolation of their encounter. Suddenly, it was only the two of them, their past wrapped in layers of nostalgia and apprehension. Sarah felt her heart race not just from fear but from the conviction in her core. This was the moment she had rehearsed, here it was, waiting for her to seize it or let escape. "Is everything okay?" David asked, concern creasing his brow. It almost felt innocent, a genuine question amidst the swirling tension. But his naivety felt like a slap. Did he not sense the gravity of what she knew? The grotesque truths hidden beneath the polished veneer of their work? "Actually, David, I need to talk to you about something important," Sarah began, her voice cracking slightly. The words tumbled out, and with them, she felt the dam of hesitation break. "It's about some discrepancies I've noticed, and the implications." He tilted his head, frowning slightly as if trying to grasp her meaning. "Discrepancies in what? Are we talking about numbers?" "Financial statements," she interrupted, determined to wrest control of the conversation. "There are irregularities in the accounts. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I've been digging deeper and there's more going on than just mistakes, David." His expression shuddered, body language shifting in response to her accusations. She could practically see the gears turning in his mind, and she pushed ahead, hoping he would follow her to the truth. "Sarah, you know how sensitive our accounts are," he said, the defensive edge creeping into his tone. The apprehension in his voice ignited something deep within her, a blend of indignation and determination. "It's more than sensitivity, David. This is about integrity. People's lives are at stake," she countered, each word fueled by a mixture of dread and resolve. "We're talking about deliberate actions to conceal what's really happening. I can prove it." She fumbled for the files she had prepared, but her fingers trembled. They brushed across the evidence meticulously compiled over the last few nights. When David's gaze flickered over her papers, she saw doubt etch itself across his features. "Evidence? Under what authority were you gathering this?" His voice hardening, a faltering attempt at control. What authority? What could she say? That she had taken the initiative to protect the very foundation they built their lives upon? The same foundation he had turned into a fortress of deceit? But now was not the time to withdraw. She stood at the front lines of a conflict that challenged everything she knew, and she couldn't turn back. Under the authority of moral obligation and corporate responsibility, she declared, finding a new strength in her voice. "I know this is hard to hear, but we owe it to ourselves and everyone depending on us to look into this together." A pause hung thick in the air, punctuated only by the chaotic symphony of the office outside. Sarah's breath hitched as she searched his face for understanding, for he had always been the one person in this world who could comprehend her passionate heart. But then she saw it, the flicker of uncertainty morphing into something darker, a hint of bitterness creeping into his expression. As David leaned back in his chair, she could feel the tide beginning to shift, the atmosphere thickening with unspoken barriers. Would he expose the truth alongside her, or would he feel threatened by the very premise of what she uncovered? And there, crystallizing in this charged confrontation, she realized, she was not just fighting for integrity, she was battling for the soul of the man she had trusted most. In a moment of clarity, dread gnawed at her core. The stakes were far greater than she had imagined. She took a deep breath, her next words teetering on the edge of revelation. "David, what I found isn't just about the company, it's about us. All this time, I thought we were on the same side, but now I'm not so sure." The words hung between them, poised to change everything. As she watched him process her statement, the possibility of losing not only her job but also their relationship loomed in her mind. The weight of that realization pressed down heavily as she wedged herself into the unknown. And as David began to respond, his eyes narrowing with a mix of disbelief and something more complicated, Sarah's heart raced for an entirely different reason. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and with it, the potential for transformation that could alter the course of both their lives, or break them apart forever. The silence that followed Sarah's declaration sat heavily between them, an anchor pulling them into a deeper abyss. David's face contorted, emotions flickering like shadows: confusion, anger, and a hint of betrayal. "Us?" he repeated, his disbelief palpable. Each word dripped with skepticism, as if he was testing her for cracks in her resolve. "Yes, David," she shouted, surprising herself with the outburst. It was the culmination of all the late-night doubts and unspoken fears that had gnawed at her. "I thought we were working together towards something meaningful. That we shared loyalty and vision for this company." The walls of the office seemed to close in, a suffocating reminder of her vulnerability. What lay beneath her bravado was a tangled web of hope and fear. She couldn't let herself falter now, not when the truth hung in the balance. "I didn't know you were digging into the accounts behind my back," he said finally, the words harsh against the backdrop of their shared history. The edge to his voice stung, igniting the fire within her. "I didn't think I was doing it behind your back, David. I thought I was doing it for both of us, for our integrity." The warmth that once colored her relationship with him had turned into a frigid chill, the intimacy they had shared evaporating as secrets twisted between them. His jaw clenched as if fighting against an invisible force, a desperate need to regain control of the conversation. "You think you're the only one who cares about integrity?" The accusation struck home, igniting a fierce determination within her. Yet, beneath the surface of her outrage, a nagging fear crept forward. What if he was right? What if she had overstepped? But focus, she told herself, it wasn't just about defending herself anymore, it was about unearthing the rot hidden in the company's foundation. "Time is running out, David," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, the tension in her body coiling tight. If you don't take this seriously, everything we care about could collapse. The people relying on us, the lives entangled in our financial practices, it's bigger than both of us." For a heartbeat, she believed she saw a flicker of understanding flicker across his features. But then, like a curtain falling, it vanished. He shook his head, brow furrowing as he processed her plea. "Why did it have to be like this? Why couldn't you come to me with your concerns before going behind my back?" The question struck her again, a dagger twisting where they both knew the truth lay. Their unwritten understanding had fractured. Until now, they had operated in a realm of trust, but now she stood at the precipice, torn between her loyalties. "Because I had no choice," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "The data does not lie, and the implications are growing. I had to act." A long pause enveloped them, and she watched David's face wrestle with a tempest of emotions. The man who had once stood by her side now felt like an adversary. What happened to the unconditional trust they had so openly shared? Would he prioritize what they had built together, or was he too afraid to confront the darkness lurking in the corners of their company? The thought of losing him, the bitter taste of betrayal creeping in, mingled with her commitment to the truth. Maybe the very foundation of their partnership had been built on delusions. "I won't back down," she said, her resolve crystallizing into something almost palpable. "I owe it to myself and to everyone who counts on us to expose the truth." As the weight of her words settled, deeper than before, David's demeanor shifted again, uncertainty coloring his features as he wrestled with the gravity of their situation. The office, once a place of camaraderie, had transformed into a battlefield of ideologies. But even as conflicts brewed, a glimmer of resolve sparked in his expression. "And if I can't stand alongside you? What then, Sarah? What choice do we have left?" She countered, the determination coursing through her veins forcing her to ground any fears. "I refuse to be complicit. But I can't do this alone. If you choose the shadow over the light." His gaze dropped, internal struggles written all over him. The rift between them grew more tangible, an echo of choices that would define the future, and in that moment, Sarah understood her path ahead was irrevocably altered. No matter the outcome, she was on her own. As they weighed their once inseparable connection against the burgeoning crisis, the formidable nature of their choices rose to the forefront. It was becoming painfully clear, they were no longer partners but two individuals on diverging paths. And with that understanding, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would unveil the truth, no matter the cost, but a chilling realization swept over her: if she lost David, what remained of the alliance they'd forged? "Time to decide, David," she said, each word heavy with significance. "Will you stand with me, or will you let our world crumble?" As the implications of her challenge settled between them, Sarah braced for the waves of choice to crash, because what followed could redefine everything they had ever known or lead them into the void forever. The tension in the office thickened, pressing against Sarah's chest like a vice. She could feel David's incredulous gaze burning into her as if he were trying to dissect her very essence. Every second that passed felt like an eternity, each heartbeat echoing the tumult of uncertainty swirling in her mind. She had boasted the integrity of their partnership, yet here they were, with trust dismantled and ambition put to the test. In that charged moment, the past flickered in her mind: memories of laughter shared in meetings, the thrill of brainstorming together late into the night, and the camaraderie that had been the bedrock of their success. All it took was one misstep for that bond to fray, and now the reality of what might come unraveling terrified her. "Why can't you see the clarity in this?" Sarah pressed, softening her tone but not her conviction. "You've always taught me to seek the truth. What is so different now?" David's brow furrowed deeper in response. "Maybe I believed in our strength to face challenges together, not through secretive audits." "Secrecy?" Her heart raced, an unexpected surge of indignation flipping the switch back on. "What I did was to protect us, David. Your inability to confront these issues is what might crumble everything we've built." It was heartrending to see him, once her greatest advocate, caught in a web of conflict, reflected in his indecision. Was he succumbing to fear, letting the potential fallout trap him? The psychological chokehold of their professional relationship seemed to tighten further, leaving her straddling the line between ally and adversary. Her determination heightened, carving a clearer trajectory for herself in this uncertain landscape. She couldn't afford to let the illusion of partnership anchor her. She had to be the architect of her own path. She envisioned stepping out beyond the influence of David's apprehensions, a landscape defined by honesty and integrity, freed from the shadows they both loathed. "I have resources," she declared, the confidence in her voice transforming the atmosphere. "I'll gather the necessary documentation, consult experts if needed. But I need you must trust me, even now, to act on behalf of what's right." His eyes narrowed, wrestling with possibilities and the fear of striking out into uncharted territory. Would this rip their once strong bond even further? Yet, the flicker of hope stirred within her for the first time. She felt the potent singularity of her ambition. This was more than just their company, it was a push toward personal liberation. "Sarah, think carefully," he finally breathed, the weight of his voice nearly suffocating. "What if you expose too much? What if you lose everything you value?" The specter of loss hovered like a specter, but something had shifted within her. The stark light of truth illuminated paths she had previously feared. Everything she cared about, from her career to her values, depended on this one pivotal juncture. "I'm willing to lose everything," she replied, every word carved from newfound resolve. "If it means building something stronger on the other side." Their eyes locked, and Sarah could see the tumult swirling in David's as he battled with the facets of respect, fear, and perhaps a hint of admiration. She realized, even if he couldn't join her on this journey, she had taken the first step toward not only liberating herself but growing into someone capable of transforming adversity into empowerment. "Then I'll need to prepare," he said slowly, the resistance draining from his words. "But understand, if we move ahead, there will be no turning back." "Then let us be wise about it," she said, a spark of strategy igniting another layer of clarity. "We'll draft a plan. Every decision will fuel our defense. The truth will be our strongest weapon." As they began to outline their strategy, Sarah felt a sense of clarity, an emerging leadership unrefined by past apprehensions. Though the specter of uncertainty remained, it was no longer immobilizing her. They were no longer shackled by the fear of weakening bonds. Instead, they stood at the forefront of a battle that could redefine their futures. Yet, as the exhilaration coursed through her, she couldn't shake the unsettling thought: if David wavered once again, could she truly endure the fallout solo? In that resolve, Sarah recognized a new struggle dawning on the horizon. Her journey would demand every ounce of determination, both to confront foes outside and the demons rising within. When the moment came, the cost of discovery could be catastrophic. Could she truly count on David to fulfill his promise, or was she destined to fight this battle alone? Time was not on her side. As they came to terms with the stark reality looming ahead, she braced herself for what the next day might bring. The early morning light crept into the office, illuminating the space where Sarah and David had engaged in their heated discussion. The remnants of last night's intense confrontation lingered in the air, thick with unspoken fears and unresolved tensions. Sarah settled into her chair, pushing aside the remnants of doubt that threatened to cloud her judgment. She had a plan, a roadmap to navigate the upcoming storm, but the stakes felt higher than ever. Determination coursed through her as she reviewed the notes she had jotted down the previous evening. They represented more than mere words, they symbolized her commitment to unveiling the truth, not just for her sake but for the integrity of the company they had built together. She felt an unfamiliar resolve, as if each bullet point on her agenda struck the chords of her fundamental values: honesty, accountability, and courage. This was no longer just about defending her partnership with David, it was a matter of her professional identity. As she inspected the strategy she had begun to forge, her mind filled with scenarios both encouraging and detrimental. Sarah recognized that her next moves would reveal not only David's trust in her but the depths of her own courage. Could she truly face the consequences that would ensue from exposing the intricacies of their operations? Any reveal could challenge their status quo and ripple through every facet of their business. She had an obligation to scrutinize everything, yet the weight of that responsibility felt daunting. Scanning her desk, she noticed the framed photograph of her graduation day, a reminder of how far she had come. The image of her younger self, brimming with optimism and hope, ignited a flicker of nostalgia and self-reflection. What had happened to that relentless ambition? She was determined to reclaim it, to blend her past aspirations with her current fight for integrity. Her internal monologue shifted, igniting the strategist within. She began to break down her plan, focusing on immediate actions. Consulting expert analysts would be crucial in clarifying how to approach any findings. She could not afford to act impulsively. Every piece of information she gathered would need to be meticulously aligned. One misstep could jeopardize everything. This position brought clarity and discomfort in equal measure, and she understood that nothing would be easy from here on. While David's support still swirled in her mind, she recognized that independence was key. He had been her partner in many instances, but now, the prospect of navigating this alone seemed inevitable. She questioned every unvoiced apprehension within him. Did he possess the courage she needed from him, or would he yield to fear again? The doubt wrapped around her heart like a cold chain, constraining her progress for a moment. Yet, she chose to sever that grip with a surge of conviction. Determined to cultivate a solid foundation beneath her feet, Sarah reached for her phone. It was time to connect with her trusted contacts, people who would lend their expertise to aid her in her mission. Each call thereon would bring her closer to empowerment, fortifying her resolve even if the ground beneath felt shaky. She swiftly dialed the number for a financial analyst she knew could shed light on potential discrepancies, a vital step toward understanding the depths of the organization they were guarding. As conversations flowed, so did potential avenues for moving forward. With every dialogue, she felt herself transform, not just from an employee to a leader but also from a woman boxed in by doubt to a pioneering figure ready to reclaim her narrative. But amid the whirlwind of action and self-realization, another thought smoldered beneath the surface: what if David still failed to see the importance of the journey they were on? How would she respond when her commitment clashed with his reluctant belief in maintaining the status quo? The clock ticked on, its reminder echoing in her ears. Sarah felt the electric buzz of impending change, yet she knew it wouldn't be without confrontation, nor devoid of personal sacrifices. As she gathered her documents, a sense of urgency enveloped her. The moment of truth loomed larger than life. The pivotal choice awaited, testing her loyalties and strength. Could she navigate this storm effectively, or was she destined to confront not just external challenges but the fragile psyche of the one she once considered her ally? As she prepared for the next day, a quiver of anxiety pulsed within her. She wasn't merely stepping into a meeting, she was diving headfirst into a crucible that would either forge her into a stronger leader or unravel her in an instant. This was the dawn of an intense battle for authenticity, both personally and professionally. She would either rise resilient or risk being lost amidst the very truths she sought to unveil. The thought lingered, an unsettling reminder of the cost in pursuing what was morally right. Was she prepared to unearth the shadows that threatened to drown her journey? With a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself. The hour of reckoning approached, and as she braced for the uncertainty ahead, one truth remained irrevocably clear: she would not back down. The morning after their tumultuous night, Sarah's resolve felt like a double-edged sword. Sitting at her desk, the sharp edges of anxiety and determination tugged at her consciousness. Today, she would meet with the financial analyst, but beyond the numbers lay a cellular layer of conflict that she had yet to process. What would it take to emerge from this ordeal unscathed? The echoes of doubt intertwined with her commitment to integrity, vibrating like a live current throughout her body. Arriving at a small coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, Sarah couldn't shake the apprehension squeezing her chest. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee briefly distracted her. She inhaled deeply, attempting to ground herself. As she settled into a corner table, the barista served her a mug that felt heavy, much like the weight of her choices. She observed the door, anticipating her contact's arrival. In moments when uncertainty loomed, Sarah felt her thoughts fracture into 1,000 questions. Would the analyst validate her suspicions? What if she revealed evidence of misconduct only to find her own credibility questioned? Secretly, a part of her feared that David still had layers of manipulation she hadn't deciphered. Every passing minute intensified her urge to act, pushing her closer to a precipice of clarity or chaos. When the analyst finally walked through the door, a cloud of professionalism surrounded him. They exchanged pleasantries as he slid into the seat across from her, and Sarah instinctively straightened her posture. This was it. She was ready to discuss the revelations that could dismantle or redefine her world. Taking a sip of her coffee, she began to lay out her concerns. With each mention of potential discrepancies, the analyst's brow furrowed deeper, and her heart raced. He tapped on his laptop, pulling up spreadsheets and documents, analyzing figures that felt increasingly perilous. "Sarah, these numbers are concerning," he finally stated, locking eyes with her. The truth crystallized in that moment, both exhilarating and terrifying. There are discrepancies in the reports. Something doesn't add up. The operational costs are disproportionately high, and if this is confirmed, it could lead to severe repercussions for your organization. Panic surged through her veins. She had suspected as much, but hearing it aloud transformed her apprehension into raw determination. The stakes had just elevated, and the solid ground she yearned for began to feel like shifting sand. Her instinct to expose the truth clashed with fear of the storms it could unleash. As they pored over the details, a vivid awareness dawned upon her. This was more than a financial investigation, it was a deep dive into the ethical marrow of her partnership with David. Had their shared ambitions blinded her to the cracks forming beneath their foundation? Would unveiling this hidden reality ultimately fracture or strengthen their connection? Her pulse quickened as moments of hesitation flickered past, reminding her of their good times, the fires of passion that sometimes masked smaller injustices she had overlooked. It would be easy to turn away, to protect herself and preserve the semblance of partnership by choosing ignorance. But the foreboding air of truth gnawed at her. Confrontation was now imperative. "You must consider how you will proceed," the analyst added, his voice steady but cautious. "Once you move forward, there's no going back." The weight of his words lingered, intensifying the internal conflict. Sarah felt the walls closing in, yet within that pressure, a spark ignited. This was not simply about avoiding risk, it was about taking charge of her own narrative. Most importantly, it was about proving that integrity lived not in unspoken agreements but in standing up against the tempting allure of complacency. What if this moment gave her the courage to confront David directly? The possibility reverberated in her mind, intensifying her resolve. She envisioned their conversation a confrontation where she laid bare her convictions and demanded transparency. But would he reciprocate with truth, or would defensive walls rise? The thought of facing him sent shivers through her. Today was an inflection point, a pivot into the unknown. Seizing control meant she had to be prepared for whatever consequences lay ahead. As she left the coffee shop, clutching the analyst's report like a lifeline, the path ahead beckoned with uncharted clarity. Sarah knew that the time had come to confront both the facade of their business and the man she once thought she fully understood. With each determined step, she recognized a singular truth: facing David wouldn't just shape her future, it would redefine her sense of self. Yet, even as empowerment surged, a flicker of doubt remained. What would become of her when the truth landed heavily in their lives? For Sarah, the moment of unveiling approached with trepidation and fierce anticipation, a reckoning that could birth either redemption or disaster. Knowing David would return from the brink of denial or chaos made her heart race. She would be prepared to face either outcome. The next hour would unravel as she stood before her greatest challenge yet, revealing the strength she had discovered within herself while simultaneously seeking answers from the man who had veiled her doubts. The stage was set, the confrontation loomed, a crucible of truth demanding to be addressed. The atmosphere in Sarah's office felt electric as she prepared to face David. The evidence she gathered buzzed in her mind, and yet beneath that determination lay a mixture of fear and anticipation. She understood that the truth she was about to unveil would stretch far beyond numbers. It held the potential to redefine everything between them. She took a deep breath, allowing an anchored sense of purpose to fill her chest. As David walked in, his expression betrayed curiosity and unease. Their past flashed before her: moments of laughter, late-night discussions, shared aspirations. But the chasm between those carefree days and the storm brewing now felt insurmountable. "Sarah, you look serious," he said, foregoing pleasantries. "It's because I need to talk about the discrepancies," she began, her voice unwavering. "The financials you saw there are serious issues that we've both overlooked." David's eyes narrowed, defensive instincts kicking in. "What do you mean overlook?" "We've been shifting numbers to minimize losses." "It's just business." "No, it's not just business, David. This isn't about cutting corners, it's about ethical standards that are being compromised. If we don't address this, everything we've worked for will collapse under the weight of lies," she declared, standing tall against the tide of doubt that threatened to wash over her. For a moment, the tension hung thick in the air, blocking any attempt at evasion. David shook his head, his disbelief palpable. "You're being emotional, Sarah. Numbers, you know how they can fluctuate. We are doing what needs to be done." The sting of his dismissal ignited a fire within her. "I'm being rational. This isn't just about us or our relationship, it's about the lives of every person who relies on this company." He faltered, his bravado stripped bare. Glancing down at the papers she had laid out between them, his expression contorted in confusion, fear merging with recognition. "What are you really suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we take immediate action," she said, her voice firm yet steady. "We organize a meeting with the board, armed with what we both know. We disclose the discrepancies and set an ethical course. It's how we reclaim control, the only way to secure our future." David's tension crackled through the air. "And what if this backfires? What if this destroys us?" The uncertainty spun like a tempest within her. Would he really prioritize their bond over integrity? The realization that they were standing on opposite sides felt both liberating and devastating. "We have to take the risk," she urged. "Or we live in fear, trapped in a facade that could implode at any moment." She watched the wheels spinning in his mind, and a flicker of comprehension surfaced, nudging at his defenses. "You want to walk away from everything we've built because of the numbers?" "It's a walk towards something stronger," she replied, feeling something shift inside her. The stakes were high, but they were at a crucial inflection point. If truth whirled in all its messy glory, they might emerge better if they could navigate vulnerability together. "Do you truly think we can face them as one?" "Yes," she affirmed. In that shared moment of vulnerability, she caught a glimpse of David contemplating the collapse of their carefully constructed world. "But only if we stand united." With a hesitant nod, he finally met her gaze, a truce forged in honesty, devoid of judgment. In a way, she felt proud. This confrontation revealed not just the turmoil at work, but their potential for real partnership, harmonious in truth and purpose. "We'll draft our presentation together," he said, his voice steadying with resolve. The barriers of his reluctance began to crumble, leaving behind the roots of their trust, which somehow still held the promise of integrity intact. Together. The word felt like a weight, but also a release. They dove into the strategy, and Sarah felt her heartbeat steadying as they split tasks between them. As their collaboration reignited their shared ideals, Sarah experienced a profound transformation. No longer the unsure. In turn, she had become a leader capable of elevating convictions above corporate pitfalls. Confidence surged through her veins, quickly replacing lingering fear. The day of the board meeting loomed ahead, and with it, a new chapter for both Sarah and David. They stepped into the conference room side by side, surrounded by critical eyes and rival interests. Together, they presented the evidence unraveling the deception, laying bare the truths that had festered for too long. What unfolded was both terrifying and liberating. With each slide, each disclosure, Sarah found strength not only in her commitment to integrity but in the realization that she had consciously decided to rise above the shadows, exposing the rot that had threatened to consume them for good. Burdened by anticipation, she glanced at David, whose eyes held a flicker of pride as he stood beside her. They had faced adversity head-on, confronted the truth, and emerged reinforced by an unexpected bond of trust, and she understood now that personal growth often aligned with collective action. As they prepared for the fallout, Sarah found solace in the clarity of her conscience. She had accomplished what she set out to do: transcend limitations, reclaim her narrative, and lead with honesty. Whatever challenges came next, she was ready, firmly anchored in her integrity. And as the boardroom synchronously shifted into dialogue heated with accountability, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The struggle for truth had transformed not only her career trajectory but also the definition of who she aspired to be. This moment was hers. Now, it's your turn. If you found inspiration in Sarah's journey and want to see more stories of resilience and transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. We want to hear from you, so comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's transformative journey. Your engagement is invaluable in the fight for integrity.